Hello everybody, it is Carol Garrison with Carol's Creative Escape. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I am coming to you live from Minnesota. I am a Stampin' Up demonstrator and have been with Stampin' Up for approximately 10 years, but I have been making cards and spreading joy one card at a time for many more years than that. Today I'm excited to share with you a fun gatefold card. It's got just a little bit of a twist to it. And I'm going to show you a couple different variations of the card and then walk you through this video tutorial as well. If you have any questions, please be sure to leave it in the comment and I'll get back to you as you're watching this video. If you like it, please give me a thumbs up, share away with people that you think may enjoy this. I appreciate all of that because it helps people find me out there when I am making these videos. And let's just jump right in and get started here. So the card that I am making today is going to, like I said, feature the Potted Geraniums stamp and dies. And I am going to be able to provide you measurements for both A2 and A4 size cards. For those of you that may not be aware, in the American market, we use North America. Let me step back a minute from that. In the United States and in Canada, we use an A2 as our standard size card. In European countries, New Zealand, Australia, they use A4, which is a slightly different sized card base than what we're used to working with. And so today I've created this card in both measurements, which will be provided so that you can easily recreate this card as well. So here is the card that I have created. It's just, like I said, a fun little gatefold card. But what's different is instead of meeting in the center of the card, it's just offset a little bit. And I have added a strip of designer series paper inside as well. So we are using in this card the Balmy Blue designer series paper that is found on page 9 of the January to April mini catalog, and I'm using the 6x6 Country Gingham designer series paper. This comes in Balmy Blue, Mint Macaron, Petal Pink, and Sweet Sorbet. And what's fun about this designer series paper is you get lots of pieces of it. These are the different patterns that you may see. And then when you flip it over, it comes in other colors. So lots of fun patterns. I'm actually going to be working on a baby photo album, and it is going to use some of this gingham paper as well because I think it'll work for that. This one is using Sweet Sorbet. This one is using our Balmy Blue, Real Red, and Sweet Sorbet for the geranium flowers on this one. Here I used Mango Melody. Nope. Melon Mambo and Polished Pink. Just a quick reminder, today is March 12th, and Polished Pink is one of our in colors that we'll be leaving when we roll out the next annual catalog. And so if you are a fan of the Fresh Freesia Polished Pink, Pale Papaya Soft Succulent, or Evening Evergreen colors, now is the time to order your cardstock, your inks, your re-inkers, any ribbons that you may want in those colors, because we're already starting to see some low inventory as we hit the end of the 2-year cycle for this group of in colors. So just a quick reminder on that. But let me go ahead and jump in and give you the measurements. I will first give all the measurements in inches for the US size card, and then I will grab measurements for you, provide measurements for you for the A4 size card. All right, so I have a piece of 5.5 by 8.5 Mint Macaron cardstock. It is scored at 1.5 and 5 3/4. And then I've got a piece of basic white cardstock that'll go in the center that measures 4 by 5 1/4. And actually this card will end up going this way. So I have another piece of basic white cardstock that measures 2 5/8 by 5 3/8. Another piece of basic white cardstock that measures 1 3/8 by 5 3/8. On my cards, you're going to notice that I've got just a real narrow border, and that's why you're getting eighths instead of quarters on some of these measurements. And then my designer series paper measures 1 1¼ by 5 1/4 and 2½ by 5 1/4. And then this little strip on the inside is 1/2 inch by 5 1/4. And then I just dug out of my scraps a piece of basic white cardstock to use my stitch rectangles for that. And then I've got another piece of basic white that is 1/2 inch by 2 inches. And that is for my congratulations, is the sentiment that I'm using from the Something Fancy stamp set. Making this a congratulations card. I'm not putting on your retirement or on your baby or anything like that until I know why I'm going to be congratulating somebody. I'll do that right before I give it to them. But for the front, the sentiment will be congratulations. And then I just dug into my scrap bin for some Daffodil Delight to cut out my geraniums, to die cut those. I've got my geranium leaves. I am just using mint macaron on this card. And I've used Cajun Craze scraps for the pot and some early espresso for the soil. I'm amazed at the detail in these dies to create this 3D look for the geranium flowers. And I would never have thought to create this dirt, but it really makes a difference on your flower when you're putting it into the pot. The other thing, I'll hold this up a little bit closer for you. When I first put this together, I had my stem going into the pot, so I had a solid green line right here, and I didn't like how that looked, and so I peeled it back up and just tore it. And I really like that because now I've got this rough angle that looks like it's actually coming out of the soil. And so I'll show you how I did that too. It was initially a mistake, but it turned into one of those happy mistakes that I can now duplicate in my cards. So let's go ahead and get started. One of the first things I like to do when I'm stamping is to, or when I'm making a card, is to actually finish my stamping first. That allows me to set pieces aside and start, letting it dry while I'm working on all the other pieces. Even though this is a cling stamp and it's already got the foam in it, I am trying to get in the habit of using my piercing mat every time I stamp. That way, when I am using photopolymer stamps, I'm sure that I've got the cushioning that I need. It is not going to affect how this stamp stamps at all, but it gives me a routine so that I don't mess up when I'm using my photopolymer stamps, because I have done that before. All right. So I'm going to set that aside, but first I do like to clean my stamps when I'm done using them. Not because I'm worried about my stamps getting stained, but because I am very worried about me sticking my artwork into the stamp and ruining the card that I'm making, because I like to do that, apparently. All right, so let's set that aside. The next piece that I'm going to do is assemble my die cuts, and that way when I hit the point of assembling the front of my card, I'm all ready to go. I did already assemble one of my geraniums just to save a little bit of time here. And on this card, I'm choosing to use the same color for the base as well as the top of the geranium. On this card, I used Polished Pink and Melon Mambo. And on this card, I used Sweet Sorbet on the base and Real Red for the top, just to add some dimension. So I thought, well, let's see what it looks like when I do all one color. And so when I glued this, like I said, I'm using my silicone mat, one of the insides from when I die cut it. I am using my silicone mat. It just catches should I goober at all when I'm using my glue, and then it doesn't get my my work surface all sticky. So let me just go through, and I'm just adding little tiny dabs of glue, trying to catch any of the bigger pieces. And I think that's good. And my hope is that it's not going to slide around. The reason I'm doing this instead of the adhesive backing sheets is sometimes when you've got all these details, you can get all those stringy things, and I just didn't want to deal with them. Plus, I have found that as I'm lining this up, having the glue here gives me a little wiggle room to move stuff around. And so when I'm laying this down, I just start, I'm really looking at where the center of my flowers, the openings are, and making sure that those get lined up. I have found that that works the best for me. Because this piece is kind of fine, it does tend to spread out just a little bit. And so you just want to get, as best you can, the holes lined up. And once I have it attached on the front, then I turn it over and give it a good press just to make sure it's going to stick. One of these is going to be on the bottom, so if you have one that you don't like how it lined up, don't worry about it. You can cover it up with that top flower. All right, now we'll set those aside so they can dry. And then I'm going to repeat the process with this piece. Now, again, I've gone back and I'm actually using mint macaron for both layers of this leaf. And I just choosing to do that because I don't like how some of the other greens look with mint macaron. That's the only reason I'm doing it. Here I've got the same colors, so you can kind of see what that looks like. And on this card I used garden green and old olive. I'm not sure I'm crazy about that either, so that's another reason I leaned back towards duplicating this. Now, a couple FYIs on the liquid glue. This is not something I normally use simply because I tend to make a mess of it, but I'm trying to force myself to use it more, and it's actually going pretty well. Because one thing I've noticed is when it does get humid here, the adhesives don't always stay stuck. And so I needed to learn how to use this in a manner that didn't get all messy, so that at least during the summer months when it's more humid in Minnesota, I can use the glue and not my adhesive, and not have to worry about things falling apart. So then again, I'm just working to line up these two layers. Got it there. I'll flip it through with the glue. It gives me that room to wiggle if I need to do that. So we'll put that there. And then I just need to put my flower pot together. And on this, I'm just going to use a little bit of adhesive. When you're using the seal adhesive, a light touch and kind of a check mark when you're done using it, for the most part, keeps it from getting all gummed up on you. I did not do that last time I used it, so that did create some issues. All right, so I'm going to set these pieces aside and let them finish drying. And I'll set that aside. Told you I'm coming from Minnesota with my recording today, and we had another 5 inches of snow, I think, that came yesterday. And had to go out and snowblow and shovel this morning. And I got so chilled I had to put on my sweatshirt. So I am not all dressed up fancy for you today to do this video, but fortunately that isn't going to affect how the video comes out here. All right, then I'm just going to center this Designer Series paper onto my basic white layer. I'll repeat this process. And obviously, if you choose a different way to decorate the focal point on the front of the card, this card can go together pretty quick. Mine is just a little bit slower because I did have those intricate die cuts that I worked with. So you can pick and choose I think that's going to be stuck down. I wish I would have centered that a little bit better. Looks like my cutting blade on my trimmer is starting to wear, and so I am going to try to peel that up. It's going to drive me crazy. I'm getting a little frayed edges, so what I was doing just now was just kind of wiping them, pressing stuff down, and that will smooth out. Whew, lucked out on that one. I am going to add just a titch more of the adhesive because I lost some of my sticking power just now. All right. So maybe by using these geraniums, it's going to bring, at least on the inside of my house, a touch of summer and hopefully start getting the snow out of here. We are tired of it. Whoops, whoa, that was a close one. Almost put adhesive on the wrong side. All right, and so I'm just going to adhere this to the edge of that inside piece. And the rest of the basic white cardstock here is 5 3/8 inch in length. You could do that also for this inside piece. To be perfectly honest, I have a bunch of inside pieces pre-cut, and I was too lazy to cut another piece. It would be 5 3/8 inches. But if you wanted them to be the same, you certainly could do that. All right. Oops, look, I got a little piece of glue on there, or adhesive. All right. Then the next step, we can set all of that stuff aside. I forgot one other piece here, and that's not even the right color. I was grabbing it out of my scrap box. Actually, that's for a card I'm doing tomorrow. I just simply didn't cut one piece. Let me do that right now. I didn't cut the paper I needed for the belly band, and that measures 1 inch by 9 3/4 inch, which means I just have to lop off 1 1/4 inches from the end here. And there we go with that. All right, so we have the card here. I just realized I didn't give the measurements for the A4 size card. I will do that when I'm all done. I don't want to confuse things now midway through here. But I will do it at the end of the video. And if I forget, I will add them to the description. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is fold over along my score lines. And you do want to make sure you're using your bone folder and burnishing the edges of the card just so you get a good crisp fold here. And so the first thing I'm going to do is add my inside layer. And honestly, from this point out, the assembly is going to be super easy. All right, so we'll put this, just center it on the inside here. Put it down, and then we're going to adhere this layer. Again, using the adhesive, a light touch and that check mark kind of motion will generally ensure that you have adhesive to work with each time you go to use that. I tend to press heavy, hard, and that is why I'm having problems today. If I remember to not do that, it usually goes very well. All right. And again, I'm just centering these pieces here so that I have even borders all the way around. Here we go. And then when I put belly bands on, I'm just going to give you a little trick of what I do. I never put score lines in, and the reason for that is depending on how thick your card is, you're going to want these lines to be thicker or smaller. I mean, these belly bands, you're going to want the score lines, you know, in different places to accommodate the thickness of your card. That's what I really meant to say. And so I just line it up and fold it over and fold it over so that these two are lined up well. And just kind of use my finger to press it in. I peel it off. And now I will put a, firm up that score line with my bone folder. And then when I put adhesive on, I put 2 little strips of adhesive. One I put on this end of the tab, so it would be the top side of that tab right at the end. And then because I want it to fold over, this I will put on the inside end of that tab. And what that does is it gives me 2 pieces of adhesive holding this in place. One at each end of the flap. So one on this end and one on this end. And that works super well for me. And then we can slide this right down here like so. I also will always put my seam on the front of my belly band. And the reason for that is I will cover it up with whatever my focal point is going to be on the front of a card. And then if you look at the back of my card, it has a nice smooth finish there. There's no seam showing on the back of my card. So that's just another little trick. I used my rectangle die to cut out this piece. So let's go ahead and start to assemble. All right, for some reason, I am really pressing down on my tape runner there. So I'm going to put this pot pretty much at the bottom. And we're going to kind of assemble this card from the bottom up. And then before I adhere this down, I am going to tear my stem, and I'm going to tear it at an angle, because then when it comes out of the potting soil, it's going to look more natural. And I'm going to pull my acrylic mat out here again just to put some adhesive on the soil. And now I can add this to my pot. And it's amazing how much this little bit of early espresso, the difference it makes. I didn't angle that quite as much as I wanted to, nor did I do it on that one. So this one is going to come out straight. I think the angle looks a little more natural, but you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to go ahead and get my liquid glue back here so I can get our flower tips, kind of the bud and the stem part, adhered down. Now one tip that I will give you, because I've experienced this myself and I'd hate for any of you, almost did it right there in fact. Every once in a while, especially if you haven't used your liquid glue, you'll get a blob that just gets stuck in there. If it's not coming out, do not hold it over your project and squeeze. Put it over a piece of scrap paper, squeeze until you get that blob dislodged, and then go back to your project. That way you don't ruin it by getting this huge blob that squirts out. I have done that a few times now, and I just don't want you guys to get frustrated and ruin your project, because it stinks when that happens. So let me now come through and add adhesive. And again, I'm using my liquid glue, and the reason for that is I want to be able to move just a little bit. So I'm just adding little dots to solid spaces on here. We'll flip it over, and I wanted to see which one. This one was the one I wanted on the bottom. So I'm just going to line this up here, and I do want it sticking off the edge of my paper just a little bit. I'm going to press it down. And then I'm going to come back here and repeat the process. Go ahead and flip it over and add it to that side. And then, as long as I got this out, I might as well use it. I'm not popping this up on dimensionals. Normally that might be something that I'm going to do. But because I've already got a little bit of bulk here and I'm actually going to put this piece up on dimensionals, I am just adhering this with adhesive. Just kind of running it centered on here and on the bottom. Okay. And then finally, last but almost not least, we're going to put some embellishments on here too. I am going to stick this on the front of my card. Now, I find it easier to put my dimensionals or adhesive, whatever I'm going to be using, right onto the belly band rather than the back of my focal point. And the reason for that is that I can shift this piece around a little bit. But if I get my adhesive in the wrong spot on there, then I'm stuck with something that may be off just a little bit. So I just try to throw 3 dimensionals or whatever right in the center. There we go. And now I can work on getting this centered top to bottom, left to right, before I adhere it. You want it before you put it on. You also want to make sure your belly band is pretty much centered on your card. And I think that's pretty good. And so I'm just going to press it down. And that part is done. Now, I like to use Wink of Stella on my cards. And I didn't do that on the other two because I wasn't sure it was going to show up a whole lot. But let's just see what happens. We'll just put some onto our geranium flowers at the top here. And I'm just kind of brushing it over to add a little bit of sparkle to my card. And what the heck, I'm going to probably do it on my leaves too, because a little Wink of Stella, a lot of Wink of Stella, it's always good. This is my favorite go-to product. All right, and then to finish off this card, I'm going to use some of these heart pearls and add it to the front of my card. And so there's kind of a milky one, a pearly one, and then just some kind of white ones. These are more clouded. These are more shiny. And so I'm going to use the regular pearl hearts just to add a little bit of shine again to the front. So we'll put one there. We'll put one up. Make sure I got it going the right way. Up there. And I think I will throw one more in. Just trying to decide which size I want down here. Okay. Now our card is done. So here's a great fun gatefold cards, just offset on the center. Use whatever you want. I think this designer series paper works really well to pop things up. And let me real quick give you the measurements if you decide you want to do an A4 card. And I'm just going to show you the difference if you're not familiar with that. The cardstock is just a little bit just different dimensions than what we have. And so their card bases and envelopes are a little bit taller and just a little bit narrower than what we have. So the measurements, if you want to make this in an A4 size card, would be a 14 by 9 centimeter by 21 centimeter piece of cardstock scored at 6.5 centimeters and 17 centimeters. Your basic white cardstock for the panels will be 6.1 centimeters by 14.5 centimeters and 3.6 centimeters by 14.5 centimeters. The designer series paper is 5.7 centimeters by 14.1 centimeter and 3.2 centimeters by 14.1 centimeter. Your inside piece of basic white cardstock is 10 centimeters by 14.4 centimeters, and this piece of designer series paper is 1 centimeter by 14.4 centimeters. For your belly band, I used what did I do? Oh, it's 2.5 centimeters by 24.5 centimeters for the belly band. So now you can make this, whether you're using the A4 card or the A2 standard card size. And I hope you have a lot of fun doing this. Again, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and also share away with your friends. I really appreciate when that happens. And again, I appreciate you taking the time to join me this afternoon, and I look forward to sharing my next video with you. Take care. Bye-bye.